there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening right now, and all of a sudden it's coinciding with disclosure. I just find it all very, and coinciding with the age of Aquarius, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. You know, just the other day, I think it was on Christmas Day, there was a documentary called The Last Pope, and I was interviewed on that documentary. And the thing that they wanted me to talk about was precession of the equinoxes. You're familiar with precession, right? Yeah. And you know, the whole story of you know, a 12th century Cistercian monk, Brother Malachy, who predicted that in 2012, now this was in the 12th century, said that in 2012, the current Pope would resign. The new Pope would not be from the old world, he would be from the new world, and he would be the last Pope. Hence the series, The Last Pope. And so I was asked well, I was interviewed and asked about how would a guy in the 12th century know about that? Well, if he understood precession, he would have known that according to the Mayan calendar, not every calendar has the same date. Most calendars put it at 2020, but in 2012 was when the age of Pisces, the fish, ended, and the new age of Aquarius was to begin. But what a lot of people don't realize is that, and let me just back up for a second and explain to the audience quickly what precession is. Precession has to do with the zodiacal belt that goes around the Earth. And as we look at it from Earth, there's 12 primary constellations of the zodiac that on the morning of the spring equinox every year, when you look to the east at sunrise, whatever the constellation is in the zodiacal belt that goes right through the eastern part of the sky, whatever constellation is there represents that age. If it's Cancer, Leo, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Gemini, whatever it is. And it will be there, and then the sun rises through it, and that's considered a sacred clock, if you will. But because of the Earth's wobble, that zodiacal belt slowly rotates over time. And for all 12 constellations to cycle through the eastern sky takes 26,000 years about. So if you divide that by 12, you get somewhere around 2160 or so. So that's the average age, 2160 years for each of those 12 constellations. The problem is they're not all the same size. So some are bigger, they last longer, some are smaller, and so, but they average out, okay? Now, if you look historically at precession and you understand the symbolism, all of a sudden a bunch of things make perfect sense. And you come to realize that precession serves as the backbone of the history of humanity. Now, I'll give you a few examples. You ready for this? Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but the Sphinx in Egypt that has the head of a pharaoh, that was carved about 4,000 years ago. The head was originally a lion's head, right? And it's facing due east. And you know when that was carved? About 10 to 12,000 years ago. And guess what the primary constellation of the zodiac was that the Sphinx, which was a lion at that time, was looking right at itself, right? As above, so below. You probably heard that somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
Well, now let's flash forward to Pharaoh Akhenaten. Do you know who Pharaoh Akhenaten is?
I think he might be Moses.
Well, I think he might be Moses too. In fact, I'm pretty sure he was. And his son was King Tut, right? And so he's holding the cross, crook, and the flail on his chest. Well, the flail herds the bulls, the followers of Taurus, the old religion of polytheistic dualism in Egypt. Taurus is a massive constellation, right? It lasted about 2,700 years. That's why the old religion of polytheistic dualism became so ingrained in the Egyptian culture. When he came into power was when the age changed from Taurus the bull to Aries the ram. That's why the crook, the shepherd's crook, which herds the rams, the sheep of Aries, representing the new religion, right? The Aryans. So he was preaching. He was the one that was to usher in the new age of monotheistic dualism, the concept of opposites that keep things in balance, symbolized by the hooked X, right? So it's an ideology, it's a belief system. The problem was because Taurus had been around for so long, the minor pharaohs of Egypt said, you know, we kind of like this Apis bull worship. We're going to stick with it. He said, well, no, you're not, because I'm the guy. And there was a battle and he lost. That is why all of his statues were defaced or destroyed. And that is why his followers were driven out of Egypt. We now call that what?
Exodus?
The Exodus. And there's your Moses parallel. So this is where the Judeans came from, right? And eventually built their temple in
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, right. Now, Aries is a small constellation. It only lasted about 1,400 years. And the last pharaoh, grand master, priest, if you will, whatever you want to call him, of the age of Aries the ram, is a guy who's typically depicted wearing a wool shawl, carrying a shepherd's crook, a lamb in his arm or a lamb at his feet. Who am I talking about?
You're talking about Akhenaten again? Or are you talking about Tut?
John the Baptist.
Oh, John the Baptist.
I'm talking about 1,400 years later.
Ah, yeah.
Jerusalem, right? Now we're in Israel. Okay? Now you understand the symbolism, right? And who did he initiate?
Jesus?
A guy who was born of the Lamb of God. What does that mean? It means that he was born, Lamb, Aries, in the last 4 years of the age of Aries the ram, and who then becomes the Fisher King, right? Because he becomes the new pharaoh, the first pharaoh of the age of Pisces the fish. If you're a follower of Jesus, you're a follower of the fish, right? So I guess the bottom line there is that Jesus and John the Baptist are not necessarily important because of who they were, but that was important, but maybe not as important as when they were, as to why they are remembered. It was a transition, okay, between two ages, Aries and Pisces. Okay, now, how long has it been?
It's been a couple thousand years, and we're going through a transition right now.
Okay, so now we're transitioning out of Pisces to Aquarius, but hold on. That is significant, very significant. But you don't realize how significant it is, because what we are going through right now is not just a change from one age to another, but we are at the end of the 26,000 year long cycle. Pisces is the last constellation. Now we're starting a whole new cycle, right? That's why the end of the world was predicted. No, it was the end of the cycle, the great year. That is how Brother Malachi knew what was going to happen in 2012. He understood the prophecy, and the prophecy is coming true. Now, we have a new pope, right? Pope Francis. Brother Francis. And he's different, isn't he? Yep. And is he going to be the last pope? Does it somehow tie into all this catastrophe and you know, the COVID and disclosure? Is all of this somehow, I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying. What do you think?
I think that all signs point to the age of Aquarius. I